Hi, my name is Andrew Robles, engineer with your Operations Training and Safety section. We're currently running all Garden Grove Fire Department employees through an in-depth transitional training that covers a wide variety of subjects, both operational and administrative. Today we're going to turn it around and offer OCFA employees, primarily the engineers, the opportunity to familiarize themselves with the apparatus they can potentially be working on after the Garden Grove transition. To help address some of those differences are Garden Grove Fire Apparatus engineers J.D. Behringer and Lucas Bauer.
Hi, I'm J.D. Behringer. I'm an engineer with Garden Grove Fire. Behind me we have the 2015 Pierce Aero XT. It has a Detroit Diesel Series 60 14-liter 6-cylinder motor with an Allison Generation 4 6-speed transmission. The front axle is a Oshkosh TAC4 independent suspension. The fuel capacity is 65 gallons, water tank is 500 gallons, and foam tank is 60 gallons. The pump is a Hale QMax 175 single stage pump that has a 1750 GPM capacity. Starting on the left hand side we have our ignition switch and our start switch, and then right above that we have our hazards. We have our parking brake right here, maxi brake. This is our command zone, which is secondary to our gauge clusters that has water temperature, oil pressure, RPMs, voltage, and fuel. Additionally, moving to different pages, we can see which doors are open on this rig. We can also do system information, where you can get your battery voltage, engine coolant level, engine oil level, power steering level, and your trans oil temp. And then moving to the right side, we have our shift selector. Coming back around, right here is located our light switch and then our panel lights for brightness. And then on the other side of this, we have our high idle switch. Here we have our emergency light master switch. You press that button and it's going to use all your code 3 lights. Moving to the right, we have our siren brake for our mechanical siren. We have our electronic siren, we don't need to even touch this. Driver side floods, the floodlight on the driver's side right above the pump panel, and passenger side flood as well. We have perimeter lights that's going to light up the roadway beneath the rig, and then we have our rear scene light. The load manager is going to stay on at all times. One thing that's different from your guys' rigs is we have our directional hazard lights. When you have your emergency master on, it does not activate this. You will have to manually turn this on if you'd like it to be used by just pressing the power button, and this will give you what direction you want those lights to go. Moving to this side of the panel, this switch cluster is our engine brake on-off switch, our engine brake high, medium, low switch, front wheel lock, fuel primer, and our siren switch. Here we have our mirror controls. Now we're moving over to our center console controls. Here we have our defroster, our floor heaters, and our AC unit. Moving to the switches over here, this controls all our windows, so we can close them from the engineer position. We have our mirror heat, and this is another siren brake that the captain can use to shut down your mechanical siren. So this pump shift is going to be the same as all OCFA rigs. Moving down, we do have our air horn on the floor and our mechanical siren. I spoke to it earlier. Up here, we have our mechanical siren brake. Just by pressing this button, we'll shut it down. Right down here below the pump shift, we have our main battery switch turn on. Located below our pump shift, we have our regen switch and our regen inhibit switch. All right, this is our transverse panel. Here we have our panel lights, our air horn, and our light showing our pumps engaged. Immediately to the left, we have our engine cooler and our recirculating line. For our pump sequence, we're going to turn our panel lights on with that panel light switch. Open up this compartment. It has our command zone, same thing that was in the front of the cab. We have our priming pump. Our pump discharge that I mentioned before is above. Our RPM gauge, water temperature gauge, and our pump intake above that. Just to the left, we have our flow minder, our foam level gauge, and our Foam Pro computer. On the left side of the pump panel, we have our radio. You need to press the front to rear button. Now you have access to the radio controls here, and our speakers located in this right underneath the radio. On the right side of our pump panel, we have our 3 discharges located on the engineer side. They're going to be numbered 1, 3, and 5. To the left of our driver's side discharge valves, we have our transverse valves. You're going to have the top, middle, and bottom. To the left of that, we have our pump controls. One thing to note for this is you will have to put it into pressure control. Additionally, the way you increase pressure is rotate this clockwise. And then the idle button you can press and it'll bring it back to idle. Just to the left of that, we have our tank to pump. And below the tank to pump, we have our master intake valves, our driver side, and our passenger side. And above the passenger side main inlet valve, we have our front inlet. On the left side of the pump panel, we have our passenger side discharges numbering 2, 4, and 6. Just to the right of that, we have our tank fill. And moving on to the right, we have our front bumper line discharge, our rear 2.5 discharge, and then our deluge discharge, which is our deck gun. This is the driver's side pump discharge panel. On the right side, we have our sight gauge, and then we have our 3 2.5-inch discharges, being number 1, 3, and 5. We also have our driver's side floodlight, and then we have our 2 2.5-inch intakes. Also, we have our 4-inch intake, which has a butterfly valve. Here is our manual override for this 4-inch intake. Right above our 4-inch intake, we have our cab lift. If you'd like to raise it, you just simply switch it to raise and then activate. Each discharge and intake has its corresponding inlet drains. Just to the left of our intakes and below our transverse lines, we have our Foam Pro selector switch with our on-off buttons. On our driver's side, we have our DEF fill and our diesel fill. On the rear of our engine, you have our 2.5 hose, followed by our 2.5 200-foot blitz line. We have our 3-inch hose that's going to be switched to 4-inch on the transition. And to the right of that, we have our 2 100-foot hose packs, and then we have our wildland packs behind that. Below that, we have our miscellaneous tools, and this is where we keep our foam intake hose. Below the miscellaneous tools, we have our hose clamps and a hydrant wrench. Up above our hose beds, we have our backboards. Now, being on the captain's side, we have the discharge and intake panel, which mirrors the engineer side. With exception to the ladder rack on this side, and there's no cab tilt on this side. On our front bumper, we have the 4-inch intake, also known as our front suck, which we have a hydrant wrench located in the compartment as well. In addition to our 4-inch front suck, we have a bumper line, which is 75 foot, 1.5 inches.
My name is Lucas Bauer. I'm an engineer with Garden Grove Fire. Behind me, you see the 2009 Pierce, and we're just going to go over the differences between the 2015 and this rig right here. So compared to the 2015 Pierce that you saw earlier, with 2009, everything is almost the same except for a few differences. Up here on the top, you have your engine brake. You have your controls for low, medium, and high. You have your front wheel lock. And then for your electronic siren, the switch is up here, whereas in 2015 it was here. With the 2015 Pierce, the command zone would show your rear view camera. With the 2009 Pierces, this is your rear view camera as well as your turn signal camera. And then right next to that to the right, we have just different controls for our mirrors. This one has the flat mirror and the convex mirror controls. So just like the 2015, with this 2009, this is our directional switch. It does not turn on when you hit the emergency master, so that will need to be turned on manually. For the 2015, you don't need to regen that rig as much due to it accepting DEF fluid. Our 2009s do not accept DEF fluid, so they need to be regened a little more often. Typically once a week is what it calls for, depending on how busy that rig is. But you would access the panel right here that has the toggle switches. One that says DEF regen on it, you would toggle that, hold it for 3 to 4 seconds, and it will cycle into its regen cycle. If you do need to cancel the regen or discontinue the regen cycle, there's 2 ways you can do it. One, you could either just disengage the maxi brake, or second, there's a button here called Regen Inhibit. If you push that and hold it, it will cycle out of regen so you can do what you need to do. With this 2009 pump panel, the only differences here is just the push button toggles for increasing pressure and into pressure mode. Here's our mode button to select RPM or pressure mode, which we should be in pressure mode. And to increase or decrease pressure, we would use these yellow arrows as shown. This is the 2002 Pierce behind me, and we're going to go over some differences between this and the 2 other rigs. It has a Detroit diesel engine, 60 series, and 6 cylinders. Transmission is an Allison automatic with retarder, has 65-gallon fuel capacity. Our water tank capacity is 500 gallons, and the foam tank is 60 gallons. The pump is a Hale single-stage pump rated at 1500 GPM. With this 2002 Pierce, it does have a lot of similarities of the same components as the 2015 and the 2009, although they are just in different locations and look different. For instance, on this side to my right-hand side of the steering wheel, we do have our ignition switch and our push-to-start engine switch as well. Up top is your emergency master controls. They're toggle switches instead of push buttons. And to the right is your electronic siren control. It's a turn dial as opposed to a toggle switch. Coming over down below, we do have the retarder switch. Here's your toggle for off and on. And then right to the left of that is a toggle switch that has 5 positions depending on how aggressive you want that to be. So on the engineer side here, on the discharge and intake panel, it is set up much like the 2015 and the 2009. Although with this 4-inch intake here, it is non-gated. The other difference here is that the cab tilt is on the 2015-2009 here. It is not on this rig, it is in another location that I'll show you in a minute. And then for all the drain valves, the other ones are pull handles. These are 1/4 turn valves and are color coded to the discharge or intake that you have. With this 2002 pump panel, it is very similar as a setup as the 2015 and the 2009 with a few differences. One to note would be that there is no handle here for a blitz line, as we do not have a 2.5 or any discharge off of the back. For your pressure control, it looks a little different, but it's the same. You still have a mode button to select RPM or pressure, and to increase or decrease pressure, here is your push buttons that are yellow. It still has the same take to pump, which is air actuated butterfly valve. And for your front inlet or your front suck, instead of having a toggle switch, this is also an air actuated valve that is a butterfly valve. For your 2 side intakes at your 4 inches, the other rigs do have toggle switches here. This one does not have that, as that is not a gated valve for that intake. Looking at the back of this apparatus, the one thing to note that is different than the other 2 of the 2015 and 2009 is that there is no rear discharge or that blitz line that the rigs have. Everything else would be the same. We do have our 2.5-inch hose. Here's a 3-inch that will be converted to 4-inch on the transition date. And then we do have our hose bundles, and we also have our wildland packs up top. There's no hose bed covers, so we do not have a separate compartment for the backboards like the other compartments. On the tailboard here, there's no internal compartments either, except for a medical. So we do have our hose clamps and our hydrant wrench exterior on the rig. So on the captain's side of this rig, we do have the ladder rack that does come down, but instead of a air actuated lock, this is manual. Come here first, hit the red handle to open, turn the master switch on, and then toggle switch up or down on how you want the ladder to go. So with this 2002, we have a cab tilt as well, but it is different than the 2015 and the 2009. It is via a controller. We keep it in this compartment. Go ahead and grab it out. Walk up to the front bumper and we will connect it. This is where you plug in the controller for the cab tilt.